Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to HR Chats with me, to Radar, where I to Radar chat about things HR and HR related. You may be familiar with them. If you are, welcome back. If you're not, welcome aboard. Courtesy of HRNZ, we are today talking with Lauren Parsons around looking after yourself and your team during uncertainty as a leader. Lauren, of course, is an award-winning wellbeing specialist. She's a TEDx speaker. She's the author of Real Food, Less Fuss. She's the host of the Thrive TV show and the founder of the Snack on Exercise movement. 20 years of experience as a sought-after speaker and consultant. I guess she's a consultant. She consults. I guess that I'm just going to make up a new word. A consultant who offers leadership development and workplace wellbeing programs. And I'll tell you what, the vexed and thorny issue of leadership and leadership stress and the new stresses on leadership, very much the topic of the moment. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Great. Hey, look, there's been a lot of discussion around leadership this year. There was a couple of big reports that came out for anyone who was looking in the primary sector. Ian Proudfoot from KPMG, they put out a big report every year. This year, he really underlined the low morale and the fatigue amongst leadership. And then, of course, there was I was doing some research for this very topic, the New Zealand Business Leaders Effectiveness Survey from Ask Your Team, and I think this, to set the scene, to quote them, they say, while they might have a wealth of talent and experience, our leaders have taken on the management of additional physical and operational tasks, as well as supporting the mental health challenges of their teams as part of their day job. It's a precarious balancing act, and it's unsustainable over the long term. What are you seeing in the leadership field? Is this echoing the kinds of things you're seeing?
Well, I think certainly leaders are certainly under pressure, and the ongoing uncertainty and that COVID hangover that we're seeing with so many staff being worn out, burnt out, tired, fatigued, it really does, that leadership mantle, I think, is very heavy on people's shoulders right now, because leaders not only are having to deal with the multiple demands of their role as they normally would, but so much uncertainty affecting that. And of course, their own personal circumstances that are affecting them and their whānau. And then there's the concern, and I have been talking to a lot of leaders and clients about the sleepless nights and this really affecting them, the concern about their team's well-being, which has always been important to invest in, but at the moment is more important than ever.
I mean, it almost goes without saying that leaders need to look after themselves right now. Do you get a sense that they are, on the whole, taking care of themselves, or are people just really focused on day-to-day challenges and teams?
Well, I think it's still always that combination. And I think certainly some leaders are very focused on that, but it's hugely challenging for them to feel that they've got the time or the ability to step away, because so many great leaders, they are empathetic towards their teams. They actually really do care about how their teams are going, and it's hard to know where to offload responsibilities or things that do take time and energy to invest in. So it's a really difficult challenge. However, there are also, at the same time, there are things that leaders can be doing. And I think the more that they can actually understand that, the more that they demonstrate and share and reinforce with their teams ways that they are looking after their well-being, the more that can flow on and actually make it okay. One of my clients recently, we caught up, and she just talked about how during the most recent lockdown, she was feeling really overwhelmed and just feeling like there was so much that she should be doing. And it was actually really paralyzing her and preventing her from really being effective. And the business owner actually came out with a message saying, everything is going to be okay. Take this time as a bit of a break and as a breather. And that just helped her to actually get back in sync and be able to actually, she was actually one of the middle managers, and she was able to lead more effectively and then flow that message out to everyone else. And they've come out the other side. They're in a region where they're now back at level 2. And they've actually had a bit of a break and a chance to recharge.
Very important as well. What is it, we've probably thought a lot about this, but the particular challenges around the uncertainties that we face at the moment, almost unprecedented in the memories of people who are leaders. What are the particular uncertainties that you're seeing?
I think it is just not knowing long-term what's going to happen in terms of the lockdown strategies, what that's going to mean. And I think it's not knowing exactly what the economic outcomes are. And obviously every industry is a little bit different. But I'm seeing with certain clients that there's a whole lot of extra work where they're having to rework because of the changes, and just a lack of appetite to plan for things that they might normally plan for, because there's that thought in the back of their mind, is this actually going to happen? So I'm not an economic expert, but certainly leaders need to be aware of what are they doing right now to look after themselves, and what are they doing to look after their team. And one analogy that several people have told me has been really helpful is to think of it like a roller coaster ahead. And that, if life is like a roller coaster, if you think about last time that you were at a theme park, and if you've actually been on a roller coaster, you sit in there and you strap in, and they give you that harness that locks down in place. And it's like, even when you try it, you can't lift it up, right? And so the thing that makes the roller coaster really fun and enjoyable, and you can just let go and enjoy the ride, is that safety harness that's in place. And I often talk to leaders about the safety harness that you need to put in place right now is your daily non-negotiable. What's the one thing that you're going to do every day that's going to boost your well-being, your mental well-being, that no matter how crazy or busy your to-do list is, that you're going to get out for that walk, or that you're going to have a 4-second hug with your loved one, or you're going to do your morning stretch routine, or you're going to have your favorite hot beverage, just looking out at the view, not being interrupted by anything. Whatever it is, these small things that we can actually plug into our days, they can be the thing that is that safety harness that means we can go the distance.
Because we are, and I've read some psychological studies and various things around this. We are creatures of routine and ritual. And when that's disrupted, those little things can be very, very important. They say, even having a shower and getting dressed and going to sit at the computer, as opposed to sort of just mooching in and sitting down. These tiny little things can actually set you up for the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's about that psychology of work, and creating separation of boundaries, I think, is critical right now, especially for those that are working from home. So normally your boundary might be commuting to and from work, might be getting changed. That may not necessarily be happening. And that's fine if you want to work out if you want to work in your bathrobe. But I would suggest actually creating something as a boundary just for your mind to be able to switch on and switch off. So whether it's going for a walk around the block, or a walk around your garden, or something that you do that gives you this trigger to know, okay, I'm shifting from one mode into another. And most importantly, so that you can switch out of work mode, put the out of office on, lock the door, have some sort of switching off ritual so that you can actually have quality focused time. Because the key thing is to be present, be fully present in whatever it is that you're doing, whether that's spending time with family or working, and not trying to do both, because you end up doing both poorly and you just feel guilty and stretched and overwhelmed.
Absolutely. How about looking after the staff? How can leaders help the staff to help themselves in times like this?
I think it's really key. I have a little model. It's got a terrible name. It's called the DIRT model, but it's 4 words. So the acronym's terrible, but the model is really powerful. And that is, think about, as a leader, what are you demonstrating? What are you encouraging in your team? What are you recognizing and rewarding? And what are you tolerating? So everything starts with, what are you demonstrating yourself? Do you demonstrate to your team that you switch off? You don't respond to emails after hours, for example. What's the messaging that you're getting out there? And if you're not physically in the office with colleagues, how are you getting that message out? What are you encouraging your team members to do? Is it when you have a Zoom meeting, let's say, do you start with a waiata or a game, or getting people up and moving, or taking a deep breath and getting centered? Do you start your meetings intentionally? And do you recognize and reward and say, hey, well done, that was great. I like the way that you started that meeting, or I like the way that you added that inspirational quote in. I think, and when we come together in meetings, those times are really critical. And then the T is for tolerating. So we know that whatever you walk past, you tolerate. And when you see it and you don't pick it up. So as a leader, what are you tolerating? Are there behaviors that you can see are not conducive to creating a high psychological safety, high trust environment? And how can you stamp those out and really say, this is how we do things around here?
Very much the show don't tell kind of model, modeling behavior. Part of this situation we're in now is seeing people, leaders in particular, being, I guess, a little bit more insight into some of their team members. When it comes to, perhaps to looking at people and thinking, this person's not performing as well as they could. Maybe they need to improve their sleep. Maybe they need to improve their food intake. How do you broach that? Because there's a boundary, I guess, isn't there, about what is acceptable conversations to have and what aren't. They can be pretty personal and very touchy subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I speak about, I have my 5 live well principles, which are around things such as, your mindset and nourishing your body and movement and taking time out to restore. And actually had a client ask me the other day, they're like, I know that one of my team really needs to work on her sleep, but I just feel like it's too personal. How do I talk to her about that? So we spoke about this. It was in a leadership meeting. And what I suggest is that you actually build it into the fabric of the way you do things so that it's something that's generalized for everyone. So it might be that at all of your meetings, you have a 5-minute wellbeing moment and you share, hey, look, today we're going to focus on sleep and we're going to talk about the 6 levers that influence your sleep. And let's all think about how can we improve our sleep? Because then you're no longer just pinpointing one person, you're making that the norm for everyone. And I would say as well, if it's built into your one-on-ones, because all leaders should be having effective one-on-ones with their team members, if there's some time and space that's built in there and it's just part of the routine, how's your well-being right now? So that becomes a normal question, then it opens up the dialogue around that, saying, well, how's your energy level been? Have you thought about your sleep? And so it can be a conversation that you can have as a leader. And obviously it is going about it the right way. So you're not putting people on the spot, but making that the norm for everyone and really having your team's best interests at heart.
Yeah, gosh, we underestimate the importance of sleep, don't we, in this day and age? And it's easy. I do it myself.
Yeah, I sometimes say to people that turning up to work with insufficient sleep is a bit like turning up drunk or on drugs.
Yeah.
In terms of the cognitive impairment. So
yes, yeah, exactly. I just remember, particularly in this day and age, there are so many triggers to bad sleeping. But there was one quote in particular from an ex-Silicon Valley person from talking about YouTube, and one of the heads of YouTube said, our biggest competitor is sleep. And yes, when you look at that gearing of algorithms and various things, how many of us have the phone and it's that endless scrolling, it's there, the blue light, the whole scenario. But likewise, particularly at the moment, eating, healthy eating, even a bit of exercise, difficult. People are sometimes not willing to go out and take a stroll around the block, but all of it crucial. The other thing, we're talking about disconnection and connecting with people. It was one of the things that was highlighted in one of these leadership studies is the increased disconnection from teams due to expanded responsibilities. How do you bring that back in when you're a little bit time poor or your teams are spread out? Any recommendations?
Yeah, I really recommend having specific connection meetings. Either specific might be that you have a 30-minute connection meeting and there's no business as usual. You're just there to connect and build that team dynamic, and or adding in connection moments in your normal team meetings. So either approach can work well. But the things that you can do is things like getting everyone grounded, getting everyone to take a few deep breaths, sharing high fives. So the idea with high fives is that anyone can share a high five for anyone else. And so it might just be, hey, Terada, I really love the way that, you opened with such a strong opening. It made me feel really great. Thank you so much for that today. I appreciate that. But obviously in a work setting, it will be something relevant that someone's done. So it creates that culture. Then you might go around and do a 1-minute check-in and have a question of the day. So it could be what's been the best thing about your week, okay, which trains the brain for positivity and optimism. Could be what's something new that you've learnt recently? What's the best book you've read? What's something that you know that you wish everyone else knew? So you just go around and you create these structured moments to get people to kōrero about different things so they can deepen the understanding of one another. And then you might have somebody share a story about your organization's vision that links into that. And then you might close with a positive intention setting or how do you want to feel today? So there's lots of ways that you can create a structure that allows your meetings to actually be focused on getting your team members to connect. And add some games in there, add some movement. Even if it's a Zoom meeting, you can get people up and get them moving around. No more dead, boring, Zoom fatigue. Actually create real human-to-human connection, even if it's virtually.
Yeah. And I guess all of this then helps to create that kind of resilient workplace culture that we are after in this day and age.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we know that one of the biggest reasons that people stick with their organization is because they love the people that they work with and they love how they feel at work. So the more you can focus on building a really high trust, high psychological safety environment, by really getting to know your team and understanding how they like to receive praise, catching people doing things right and giving that immediate specific praise, fostering connection. Because even I was talking to another leader recently who said, it seems like my team, they just don't really like each other. They're not turning up to the meetings. It's almost as if they don't like each other. And so we said, well, what if you actually force them to get together if it's digitally in a breakout. And let's say find 4 things that you all have in common. And they might have to take a while to have a conversation to find those things, but over time that would nudge a little bit more commonality and understanding. So it's things like that.
One of the things that came up in one of these leadership surveys was the danger currently of the good news bubble, where we are disconnected from teams and from staff and from a physical environment where you might just get a sense that something's not right and then be able to sort of draw that out. It's people are more willing to give good news at the moment than they are to say, hey, look, there's a real problem here. Any advice around that?
Yeah, I think that's really legitimate. And especially when you're not, as you say, in a room with someone, it's harder to pick up, and it's harder to have a little, hey, can we just have a chat after the meeting to the side? So I think it's about finding virtual ways to do that as a leader. So often I talk to leaders about, people will say, oh, I have an open door policy. But actually, if you say, yeah, people can talk to me anytime, I actually don't recommend that. I think that's poor time management as a leader. What's much more effective is, rather than saying you can contact me anytime, is to say the best time to drop in and connect with me is between 9 and 10, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever it is, Tuesday afternoons, Thursday afternoons. If you let your staff know these are great times when I'm just available and I'm really happy for you to connect in with me, you put out your personal Zoom invite, or maybe you have a booking system where people can just book in a chat time, then people will be much more likely to actually book in those times and be able to raise things one-on-one. Whereas if you say I have an open door policy, people know that you don't really want to be interrupted 24/7, so they won't necessarily come to you. So I think creating and cultivating moments for that to happen, or maybe it's just after every staff meeting you stay on, and if anyone wants to chat to you. Also encouraging people to use private chat just in a really practical way. If you're in, let's say, a Zoom meeting, saying if you have concerns about this, use private chat, and using the chat effectively, because often people just don't contribute to a meeting because they don't want to speak over others. So making it okay and making it the norm to have people responding to what's being verbally said in the chat, so it keeps the conversation flowing more effectively as well.
Brilliant. Any other key, practical tips to help leaders focus, or things they should be focusing on?
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? Focusing on what
Yes,
they should be focusing on. What I think the key thing, I think the key thing is knowing what's important, and one of the most important things we can be doing right now as leaders is reflecting, pausing and taking time to reflect. The other day I was out for a walk and I saw this beautiful keriru, this wood pigeon, just swoop up in the air and just literally pause mid-air and stall, and then head off. And it just got this huge acceleration. And it reminded me that as leaders, we need to actually use the power of the pause sometimes. We know that in a few years, we'll look back on this time right now and think about, oh, wow, I learned so much and I built my resilience and I stretched and grew, because we know challenging times build resilience. But I encourage you to see if you can fast forward that process, reflect right now, what am I learning? And start to apply those learnings now so that you can get more benefit rather than having to wait a couple of years. So the more time we can use these moments to pause and reflect on what is really important and to then focus on it and head in the right direction, that's much more powerful than just being busy in any old direction.
And look, the issue of leadership fatigue, leadership burnout, again, noted in one of the reports that actually directors and boards need to be really concerned about this. We need to be looking after our leaders, because they, often they're focused on making sure that all the other things happen at the detriment to their own physical and mental well-being.
Yeah, and I've been asked to do a bit more one-on-one and coaching and mentoring, and I think that is critical, both for senior leaders and middle managers who often feel a bit caught in what is going on. So being able to provide that support. I often talk about keys to a resilient organisation are leadership commitment to wellbeing, first and foremost, and then leadership capability and development around the skills and the tools to actually create a positive, vibrant, energised workplace culture where people can thrive, and then having that high trust environment, good two-way communication, and lastly, actually monitoring and managing where people's wellbeing is at effectively, not just running surveys and then not doing anything about them, but really having effective feedback and action loops.
Great.
It could be another
Tell you
whole
what,
talk, though. It could be another
there could
whole
be look at there could be another could well be another whole talk. Indeed, look, the most important thing is people need to, they need to place their own priorities first, and as you say, in this time of uncertainty, it is so. The only certainty is uncertainty. We just have done, and some people may have seen it, the a podcast special on employment law around vaccines, and literally we wanted to check the news between the start and the end of the podcast to make sure that nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Eddie, just that little single thing that you would focus on a day-to-day thing to get through, and often it's not so much that uncertainty, sometimes it's just that the one little thing that suddenly everything's the big things, and then it's one little thing. It could be a personal thing. You can't get a tire repaired, or a food order hasn't turned up. How do people deal with those little triggers that are actually symptomatic of what are they're like I guess I'm thinking of a medical they are like the tiny pimple on the top of a large boil of frustration and confusion and fear.
Yeah, I think just understanding our resilience has been worn down. It really has been. And so it's, again, I'd come back to what's your daily non-negotiable. So just actually to share for me personally, I have 3, and that is to do my morning stretch routine as soon as I wake, just have 4 minutes for myself, favorite music on, stretch, focus on breathing, think about what I'm grateful for, and set a positive intention for the day. So if as a leader you don't already cultivate your morning routine and make sure that you bookend your day well, highly recommend that. I also make sure I have 4-second hugs with each of my loved ones, which usually probably happens 90% of the time. And then I aim to get outdoors and get out for a walk. And it sounds so simple, but the power of that is that sometimes we're not even aware of that impact on our mental health, on our sleep. So getting out, getting sunlight into the retina of your eye, getting away from the desk, even though there's a million and one things to do, it's really powerful when you can be disciplined to do that. And I think, again, that comes back to then you demonstrate that for others. So having that daily non-negotiable for yourself helps you weather all those things that come at you. And then the other key thing would be in that moment to breathe, and I could talk again a whole lot about that. So John Kerwin talks about how breathing saved his life.
Yes, he does.
Breathing,
yes, he does.
Proven is the most effective way to shift out of that fight or flight.
In fact, for those who were at the recent HRNZ summit, he gave a wonderful presentation on that power of breathing and those non-negotiables and the ritual and the routine, and in many ways you've certainly echoed and strengthened a lot of what he said, Lauren. Hey, what's coming up for you, for people who thought she's interesting? More of her.
Well, we were just saying beforehand, actually, so if you're watching this live or this week, on the 20th of October, I am doing an HRNZ webinar for you all. So come and join me for that. Book on in. I think it's on trust, how and why you need to build trust in your organization. So I'll be talking about really practical ideas to build trust from your staff, of yourself, and also build trust between colleagues. So how to create that high psychological safety environment, which we know is the number one factor in a high-performing team.
Brilliant. And of course, for anything else, you can go to laurenparsonswellbeing.com. What's the week hold in store for you, Lauren?
Well, we are very fortunate that we've got renovations going on. So very fortunate and thankful that it's happening, but it's also quite disruptive and there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of supply issues. So, but anyway, that's what's going on a personal front, and just a lot of online presentations going on. And of course, while we're recording this, it's actually been Mental Health Awareness Week. So I've been doing lots of things for that. So there's lots going on online, and then school holidays. So be spending a bit more time with the whānau.
Go. And which could be a stressful event in and of itself. I was just before we came on, I cannot get the Pokemon theme song out of my head. My 5-year-old is obsessed with Pokemon. And all of these things that you spend a lot of time around, which can be absolutely joyful. So, hey, Lauren Parsons, thank you very much. For more of Lauren, you can go to laurenparsonswellbeing.com. That is all for us for now from HR Chats with me to Radar. Just a reminder, if there is anything you want to hear about or anyone you think we should chat with, have a little conversation yourself with HRNZ, and we can line that up for you. Goodbye. Take care.